That's a good defense, because it makes a lot of sense. But then on the other hand, you're Italian, so you know.
What about you as a writer? Because you released a book for Serpent's Tail, The Shit of God.
That, I have to say, is not a book of, it's not a book of text per se, it's a libretto, really. They asked me to write this only as a documentation of the text that many people could not understand from the records. You know, you put a record out, and especially now with a CD, the print is this, you know, I can't even read it. So they said, would you please release these texts so someone can at least read it, and when they're listening to the music. But it was not, it's not a book. I mean, if it was a book, it wouldn't be a very good book. I mean, it's just a libretto, really. And I will probably include more things in it or add to it or whatever, but it was very sweet. I mean, when they asked me, I said that was a very sweet thing. But I think it is useful for people who want to know what some of the words in the pieces are, you know? That's what I think.
Well, now I'd like to make a quite complicated question. Talk me about your musical influences and your musical collaborations, because, for example, in La Serpenta Canto you used to play blues, or you collaborated with John Paul Jones, former Led Zeppelin's bassist. I mean, there are so many different things in your music.
Yes. Well, influences. One of the influences that I've talked about many times was Ornette Coleman, and will always be Ornette Coleman. I never played with Ornette Coleman. I don't know why people write that. I played with Bobby Bradford, and I think they saw a picture of me and Bobby and they said, oh, that must be Ornette Coleman, even though he was holding a cornet, you know, I mean, you know, sabbatical. So anyway, but Ornette, and then of course great singers. I mean, I've mentioned Kulthum before. I've mentioned that. I would certainly say that a singer like Maria Callas could not. She had to be an influence. I mean, in terms of the power and the emotionalism. I didn't really listen to her until I had been singing quite a long time, but I was very struck and proud, you know, that she was Greek and so forth. And then John Lee Hooker, you know. John Lee Hooker, Johnny Cash, and then the Middle Eastern, and then other Middle Eastern singers. You know, there's so many singers and so much music out there. I couldn't even begin to tell you or finish. Now, when it comes to working with John Paul Jones and I actually have a lot of music in common. But it comes that the source was in the blues. That was our source of commonality, and also that he really appreciated my Middle Eastern singing and the Greek singing and this style of singing. He loved this. And I didn't know he would like the style of singing. I had no idea. And I was just improvising with him one day, and he just loved it. But I had no idea that he would. It was really a surprise to me. I thought he would say, you know, that stuff is... and in fact, it was the opposite. So I was doing a lot of Amanides, which are improvisations based on the word aman. In the Middle East, is an expression that refers to something that is beyond any kind of description of words. It's just aman, you know. It's like, and so the singers used to improvise on the word aman a long time, and if they forgot the words, they would go back to aman. And I'm very good at that. I'm very good if I forget the words aman. So. Anyway, he liked this, and then we used to sit there and sing Motown songs together at the end of the day. We just had a lot in common. We were introduced through friends to our music, and I always thought the bass and the drums. As far as the Led Zeppelin was concerned, what I was listening to was the bass and the drums. And why is that? Because as a singer, I always said that the limitation for me was, too bad I didn't work with a bass player like that. The low frequency. I mean, that low frequency and the power and the propulsion of the sound, you know. And that kind of drumming, which is big drumming, but not messy, not busy, just, you know, strong, but not that kind of, you know, what a lot of heavy metal drummers try to do.
It's too thunderous.
Yeah, he's a real musician, you know. So when I heard about John being interested in me, and when he heard about the same, he said, yeah, we got to check it out, because what's the possibility of that? Was so remote. And then it just worked immediately, and that was it. Nobody could believe it, but we could believe it because we're musicians. So, I mean, you know, if you're a musician, you know, if you've been doing music for 20, 25 years, that you've learned a lot of music, and you have a lot, you know how to play a lot of music, not just what you've recorded. What I've recorded is nothing. It's nothing. It's only one little tiny part of everything I know. Because going in the recording studio for me is a fucking bore. It costs money. It's, you know, a political thing. Does the record company want this? Do they want this? Do they want this? Ugh. But I really much prefer just performing, really, than going through all of that. I really don't. I'm not big on doing records at all. Really not. Not at all.
Okay, thank you very much, Diamanda.
My pleasure.
You were so kind.
My pleasure. That was great. That was great.